So hello, everyone. For those of you that are new, I'm Andira Croder, the Global Marketing Manager for Link3D. And just some background, Link3D is a workflow MES and QMS software solution designed to help organizations scale their additive operations. And we're honored to be a part of these Women in 3D Printing events and continue to bring the community together every month. But before we begin today, I just want to give a few tips on the Remo platform that we're using. So for best connection, we advise to use your computer on the Google Chrome browser rather than a smartphone or a tablet. And you will need to make sure both your your computer and Chrome settings allow for camera and microphone access to Remo. If you're having trouble viewing the panel, first try refreshing the page. Also make sure you only have one tab open in the Remo platform. And if you're still having connection issues, please send me a message in the of Remo. You can search for my name, Andira, and I'm happy to help get you connected as well. So thank you, everyone. I'll hand it over to Kristin.
Great, thanks, Andira. So welcome, everyone. If you haven't been to one of these before, this is the Women in 3D Printing virtual panels and networking events. So hopefully you caught a bit of the networking before we started this panel, and then there will be additional networking afterwards as well. Today, the topic is on sustainability. If you want to watch this again, or you want to see any of the past panels, all of this is on the Women in 3D Printing website. You can see all of the video recordings. This one will come up probably about a day or so after the end of the panel today. So before we get started, I just wanted to do a quick introduction. So as I've mentioned in the past with these panels, these are essentially a sneak peek into the Type 3D Printing Conference that we are holding in January. Type 3D Printing is put on by Women in 3D Printing. It's an all-female agenda of speakers, but of course, with all of our events, everyone is welcome. It's a 2-day virtual event on January 27th and 28th, and you can see all of the details and information on the website at type3dprinting.com. Just a couple announcements regarding the conference. The speaker deadline, if you're interested in speaking at the event, is September 18th. And also just wanted to do a big thank you to all of our current sponsors. So there's plenty more spots available. The top 3, Trump, MatterHackers, and HP are our platinum sponsors, and the remainder are gold and silver. So let me know. You can reach out to me directly later if you want, through LinkedIn or through here even, if you want to talk about a potential sponsorship. So back to the topic at hand. So essentially, today the topic is about sustainability, and sustainability as it pertains to additive manufacturing really has kind of 2 topics, and I think we'll hopefully touch on both to some degree today. The one side of it is how 3D printing affects sustainability in general in manufacturing. Obviously, being an additive process versus subtractive, we have a much greater reduction in material consumption. Distributed manufacturing allows to potentially reduce the carbon footprint for shipping and logistics and transportation. On-demand printing can potentially reduce the energy consumption needed and additional logistics that go along with warehousing. The elimination of molds will also reduce the energy and the material consumption necessary to produce those molds. And then we see one of the biggest topics, obviously, is lightweighting that we see in industries like aerospace and automotive. So there's a lot of advantages to using AM for sustainability. But I think the topic today probably will veer a bit more towards how do we improve the sustainability of AM, the AM ecosystem itself. So with that in mind, I want to remind everyone that you can submit your own questions to the panel over here on the right-hand side. There's the Q&A. To go ahead and just put your question in there, ask it. If you see a question that you're interested in, you have an opportunity then to upvote that question. So when we get a bit deeper into the panel, I'll start going to those questions and going with the ones that have kind of the most popularity. Just try to remain somewhat on topic, the topic of sustainability in additive manufacturing. So with that said, I'd like everyone to just maybe do a brief introduction. Do you want to go ahead and start off, Cindy?
Sure.
Great.
Thank you, Kristin. First, before we get started, this is my first time participate in the panelists, and I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Women in 3D Printing platform, Nora Torre, yourself, Kristin, my panelists, Shirley and Alan, and the most important to all of the audience. I'm Cindy Deekitwong, first generation female engineer in Thailand. Back 19 years ago, 8.7% of the management position were held by women. Now, women holding over 32% position that have a business responsibility. So I'd like to pause and congratulate to all of us that participating today. As a global head of marketing in Henkel, I'm a big advocate for diversity and sustainability. My contribution today is to share all of you the perspective from the marketing, the value proposition of the 3D printing when it comes to sustainability, and how to blend those initiatives into go-to-market and business model so that we in additive manufacturing build in sustainability as a part of our DNA. Thank you.
Great. So did you want to give a bit of background in terms of what your activities are within Henkel in terms of sustainability?
Sure. So because Henkel, it's quite a big company, 20 billion euro in sales. So we have a parenting initiative. So my role in marketing in additive manufacturing is to cascade selective project and be able to implement that initiative into additive manufacturing in Henkel.
Great. Okay, how about Sherry? Do you want to go ahead and give yourself an introduction?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sherry Handel. I'm the Executive Director of the Additive Manufacturer Green Trade Association, also known as the AMGTA. And we are a new trade group that was founded at Formnext last year and announced as a new organization. And I came on board here in late February. So our mission is to promote the positive environmental benefits of additive manufacturing and to help increase adoption of AM throughout the world. So I'll be talking about sustainability today in relation to environmental practices mostly. I know we're going to be touching on some other things with social impact and of course the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Great, thanks Sherry. And Ellen, how about you?
Sure. So hi, everyone, and thanks, Kristin, for having me. I'm Ellen Jackowski, HP's Chief Sustainability and Social Impact Officer. HP is a leading provider of 3D printing solutions, personal systems, which includes PCs, gaming equipment, virtual reality equipment, as well as printers. But as the Chief Sustainability Officer, I spend a lot of time working with each of our business units, including 3D printing, to think about how we can shift and completely reinvent our company for sustainable impact. And we choose those words very intentionally. Sustainable impact isn't just about the impact we have on our own company, on our own operations, but how together with our customers, we can enable ourselves, our customers, and the communities we serve to create sustainable impact together. We have 3 different pillars that we identify as part of that strategy: planet, people, and community. And that addresses both the environmental and the social impact of what we do as a business and how we affect our customers and where we work. So looking forward to all sorts of good discussion about 3D and sustainability today.
Great. So one thing I was going to ask you earlier, but decided to save it for now, was I think it's a unique position to be a Chief Sustainability Officer. And I think that's awesome that HP has taken that initiative. Is this something that you see becoming more common going forward? What was the motivation behind creating this role within the corporate HP?
Yeah, well, sustainability at HP has really existed since our founders created the company. Back in the 50s, we had 8 corporate objectives, one of which Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, our founders, identified as global citizenship. Today, we now use the language sustainability for those words, but they really had a very strong connection to corporate responsibility and ensuring that we are functioning as a company in accordance with the values that they had. So as it's evolved over the years, sustainability has kind of gone from being founder-led to now, across the DNA of the company. We've had a sustainability team in some form existing for decades, but this role, the Chief Sustainability Officer role, is something that is fairly new, a handful of years old, and you see this position being offered at many companies now. And I think it's a true signal to elevating the importance of this, not just as a function of what is our responsibility, but it's also a clear business opportunity. You know, the world is changing and we need to continue to respond to all of these big mega trends, to climate change, to social inequalities, and formalizing this position, I think, really brings the attention and helps empower the company to address very specifically all the issues that, at least at HP, are within our sustainable impact umbrella.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's so fantastic. And I love exactly what you said, that it completely elevates it to kind of the forefront, that this is something not only that we care about, but you should be caring about it as well. So we'll go back now more towards the topic of today in terms of 3D printing. I think we should just start the panel today with, you know, your guys' opinions in terms of what do you see as the challenges that are facing the additive manufacturing industry as it pertains to sustainability. Anyone can go ahead and answer.
Oh, I'd like to kick that off if that's all right. So while the economic and technical superiority of additive manufacturing is pretty well known within key industries, its environmental benefits are often less well understood. And so to help better understand sustainability, in AM, the Additive Manufacturing Green Trade Association was founded to really help address this challenge. So our mission is to promote, like I mentioned earlier, the inherently positive environmental benefits of AM within key industries and the public at large. And one of the challenges is the existing research that's out there doesn't provide us with enough good metrics and data. We are going to be commissioning research, and I'll be talking about that later, that will include LCA, which is the life cycle analysis, also known as life cycle assessment. They're interchangeable, they mean the same thing, LCA. And that means that we are going to analyze a part through each phase of its life, from raw material extraction, processing, manufacturing, transportation, use, and disposal. And this research will help us as an industry better understand what our eco footprint is now, while also revealing what we need to focus on in the future to help make this industry even more sustainable.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, Shirley. For me, the most challenging that I see right now is about reliable data, right? The challenge here that is today sustainability data is still awfully compiled manually and draw from decentralizing sources, right? To ensure the reliability data flow, we have to start creating a fully integrated sustainable measurement and data system. Especially, I'm speaking from the raw material or from the final product standpoint, is that during the product development and the sourcing decision, right? How do you build that reliable data where we can help building the quantifiable proof point and show that value proposition to the customer? That's why in Henkel, when we deal with the sustainability, we start putting a strong focus more on the integrating sustainability data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at HP, I would say, you know, we've completed an LCA for our 3D printing. But, you know, what we're very interested in is, you know, within our company, we have a philosophy around reinventing towards a circular economy. So ensuring that we can continue to grow as a company, and that's decoupled from consumption. And as we set up our 3D printing business and continue to scale it, we're thinking about all aspects of that value chain. You know, what are the inputs into our 3D printers? What are the outputs? And how do we make that whole process continually circular? And right now we've had some great progress on the outputs portion, where, you know, any of the materials that are running through our 3D printers are recyclable. We can shred up those end-of-life parts. We can reuse that powder and create new parts for injection molding. So that's a key thinking in terms of how we're thinking about the whole system. Where I think we're facing challenges when we think about this circular model is on the input side. You know, it would be great, you know, in a future world for what comes out of the 3D printer, you know, once we grind it back up, can go right back into the 3D printer for the types of materials and applications that we're looking for. So, you know, our eye is onto the future of, you know, how do we set up this industry? And as we transition, we've seen certainly, you know, increased adoption during the pandemic. Because of the flexibility and the speed that 3D printing offers. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to innovate. And as we stand up this industry, as we all transform from traditional manufacturing to 3D, we think about it holistically and doing it right from the beginning.
I think you really hit something interesting there that we don't talk about enough, I think, within this industry is we're, as an industry, I think because we're small and we're pretty tight knit, we generally focus kind of really inward. But I really like how you brought up the fact that when we have these end of life parts, we can shred those up and put them into injection molding parts or something else besides 3D printing. And I think that's something to create this truly circular economy. We do need to be able to start thinking outside of our industry to be able to fully utilize the recycling capabilities. Cindy, do you have any thoughts on that? I feel like from a materials perspective, there's a lot that could be said.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, step back, like you say in the beginning, Kristin, I think one important point that we have to reflect ourselves when it comes to 3D printing, technology in general, right? There's a two value prop already on the sustainability. It's facilitate more efficient design, right, and create less waste. So I think we need to understand and use that as a foundation when it comes to sustainability. The lightweight is a big one, right? When you have a complex design, you're able to consolidate that part. The lightweight can also reduce the fuel consumption. And from the waste standpoint, like you say, Kristin and Alan, the additive itself is create less waste, but I think there's also the implication around supply chain, right? Where we reduce on-site, on-demand printing is a huge advantage when we have a dispersed manufacturing. Now, on the material standpoint, for us, we start small, right? I mean, when you look at the initiative from the Henkel big picture, we have so many initiatives that we work with the supplier, we work with the customer. But when it's cascade down into 3D printing, we start small. We look at it, we start from even the AM facility. We have Henkel in Dixon in California. They become a first location for us that is a zero landfill location. And we start looking into putting the solar system in there. We work with our supplier to see if we can build more formulation that have a biorenewable ingredient in there. And one basic thing that we implemented on the material standpoint, we implement the recycling program. We work with the TerraCycle company in New Jersey, and we allow our customer, OEM printer, and the service bureau to recycle Loctite material packaging. We supply the resin with the recycling box, so that when they finish using the product, they can dispose the use of container of the UV curable resin, as well as the supporting material and the failed printed part. So that is a basic thing that we can start when I say start small when it's come to this initiative.
Interesting. So I want to circle back to one of the things that we talked about earlier on. It looks like it's got a few votes on the Q&A is the LCA. So the question is, LCA would likely miss issues like plastic manufacturing waste. So in AM technologies that use powder, how are companies like HP managing that waste? The powder is essentially a microplastic.
Yeah, and we certainly are very aware of our responsibility around plastics. And of course, that is a material that our 3D printers use. At HP, we have a full comprehensive plastic strategy, and it begins with this concept. I'm going to speak a little more broadly outside of just 3D across our entire product portfolio, both print and personal systems. But the first step of our plastic strategy is to eliminate using it wherever possible. So for example, HP just announced a goal to eliminate 75% of single-use plastic in our packaging by 2025. So that's something that we're really thinking about is what material types should we be using for certain applications. After that first step of eliminating it, if the second step is if we need to use a material, are there other alternative materials that we can substitute? So for example, again, in a packaging example, do we need to use plastic, or could we use molded pulp fiber, which is more sustainable for the long term? And then after that, should we be using recycled plastic instead of virgin wherever possible? And this is interesting when we think about the powder applications of, those microplastics and making sure that we are maintaining as much control as possible over all of that. And so with HP's process, you can reuse any leftover powder and put it right back into the 3D printer. So that's something that we've paid special attention to and made sure that our customers understand exactly how to safely manage the powder and ensure that those microplastics stay under control. We're very involved in the ocean plastics issue at HP. A separate project that we've been working on for quite some time is to use recycled plastic bottles to create, for example, HP ink cartridges. And the way that we're doing that is, when you send an HP ink cartridge back to us, we disassemble it. And then we shred that plastic cage of the cartridge. We mix it with recycled bottle plastic to create a new cartridge and put it back on the market. Those bottles that we're mixing into that process, we're sourcing from an ocean-bound plastic location like Haiti, where there is no municipal garbage collection, and that plastic tends to flow into the ocean if we don't hire collectors and pick it up to then upcycle it into our products. So just a bit of the more holistic thinking in terms of our entire product portfolio and how careful we are in understanding the implications of the materials we choose, where we source them from, how our customers use them, and helping to advise our customers to use them in the most sustainable manner. So in thinking about the powder and end-of-life parts for our 3D printers, particularly the plastic ones, we spent a lot of time thinking about how we do this in the most responsible way and continuing to raise the bar on ourselves as well as the industry.
That's great. I mean, I think that Haiti example is a perfect example of a real, true circular economy on a global scale. Sherry, do you want to touch upon anything? And one of the questions someone said is, and I feel like Cindy's touched on this, and Ellen obviously just answered quite a bit of it, was for all the panelists, can you please comment on the concrete initiatives, programs at each of your organizations to foster sustainability? How is this measurable?
Sure. I mentioned about us commissioning research projects. And so one of our projects to help us create a more circular economy involves working with a few of our member companies and leading metal and powder companies and other industry players to develop a global set of standards to properly and cost effectively recycle powder condensate. And powder condensate is the powder that has been blown off a build layer in the powder bed fusion build process. And this powder cannot be reused. It's not like reusing powder where like 90% of the metallium powder could be reused. This powder has been affected so that it cannot be reused. And it is considered here in the US hazardous waste by the Environmental Protection Agency. So it requires special handling, and it ends up being put in a drum and put into a landfill. So we want to find a way, if possible, to repurpose this, recycle this particular condensate, and publish standards that we can share with our member companies and industry to help mitigate this challenge. And we plan to have these standards available in early 2021, and we will share them with member companies and our industry. We also have two other exciting projects that we've started working on that are underway. First, in June of this year, we commissioned a research project through the Technical University of Delft in the Netherlands to review existing literature regarding sustainability within metal AM. And for this research paper, we selected a leading researcher in the field of sustainable engineering who has a really strong background in AM research. So his team is currently reviewing and examining already published academic research. And we are planning to have this study ready to share at Formnext in November, so we can share it with all of you. And we felt a summary of what research is currently out there would be a really good starting point for us to get a better understanding of where we are now, so we can take that and generate new research topics based on what we find. Secondly, we are working with a major research university here in the US to commission a new research project, which is an LCA, a life cycle analysis, of an additively manufactured aerospace component as compared to an identical cast component. So this groundbreaking research, which we expect to be completed at the end of next year, will be one of the first real LCAs to be conducted directly comparing an additively manufactured part to an exact same cast part. And this research will help reveal how we're doing and what we can do in the future to help become more sustainable.
Great. I think that the thing that's really interesting about your organization is it kind of addresses one of the questions that's also popped up here about greenwashing. My hope is that an organization like yours that's is nonprofit is actually going to be holding people accountable for following through and promising on what they promise. I mean, do any of you guys have a comment? I mean, honestly, greenwashing is a word that I hadn't come across till just recently. Do any of you have any comments on the topic in terms of how to avoid greenwashing?
I mean, at HP, our sustainability programs have been around for, many, many years, decades. And we understand, the reputation that we have in this space and how it can be destroyed with one wrong move, right? You claim something and then someone, questions you and says, well, are you really doing that? Is that really the impact from a sustainability point of view? So it's very easy to destroy this reputation that we've worked so long and hard to be very authentic, to be very transparent, and to show our true progress. We've been releasing the HP Sustainable Impact Report for decades as well, and that's a way that we really try to hold ourselves accountable and be really transparent about where we're making progress and where we aren't. So we are very aware of, the boundaries of greenwashing within a company. The challenge we have is, we have 55,000 employees. And one of our initiatives at the corporate level is to empower every single HP employee to be able to create sustainable impact within their job role. So whatever role you have in the company, if you're in legal, marketing, procurement, finance, design, engineering, there's a way for you to contribute to our sustainable impact initiatives. And once you open it up to 55,000 employees who haven't spent, their careers in this space, it's very easy for them to maybe make a judgment call that could lean towards greenwashing. So that's one of the things that we're working on now as we continue to empower all of our employees. How do we do that in a way that ensures that they're all kind of following all of the rules and the boundaries that we've set for ourselves over these years, so that we are very careful with our reputation in the space.
Mm-hmm. I think that all makes a lot of sense, and I think as well, by creating a role such as the Chief Sustainability Officer, it also that's a signal that the company takes it very seriously, and they want someone to be overseeing and making sure that doesn't happen. How about at Henkel? Cindy?
Yeah, I'm about to say, Ellen, I couldn't agree more. And that is a very important step, right? How to get, like in Henkel, we have 52,000 employees. We have 56 countries, 184 locations. It's important to cascade down that key message and be consistent across, so that the employee, the people, the function feel empowered to be a part of the journey. Another thing I see with this type of initiative around sustainability is not the short term. Right, we are in it and commit to it in the medium or even long term, and it's about outlook of 5 or 10 plus years. Right, in Henkel, when we talk about carbon footprint in operation, we want to reduce 65% in 2025, 75% 2030, and we want to be carbon positive in 2040. And you can see that this is not a short-term thing. So it's important to convey a message across, be consistent, and emphasize more, so that they feel to be a part of this initiative along the journey.
So I think that does touch really well on the next one in terms of, you have these goals. How are you publishing these findings? Are you publishing? One of the questions is, are you publishing your findings in peer-reviewed journals for recycling final parts, for what you're talking about in terms of the carbon footprint? Where is this information being published?
For us, for HP, it's on our website, and it's also in our annual sustainable impact report as well. We do submit, papers to different areas when appropriate. But I kind of wanted to go back to the question you asked earlier around, where are you focusing? What are the biggest challenges? And for us right now, we're really focusing on setting up that recycling system. And we've got a really strong pilot going now in the United States. But as we've started standing up our 3D printing systems, again, how do we do it in the most responsible manner from the very beginning, enabling our customers to take action with us? So having a way, not just saying that the material is recyclable, which again is something that every material that goes through our 3D printers, all of that is recyclable, the powder and the parts, but then offering a system, a way for that to happen from the very beginning when we sign up a customer. So how do they then decide to handle the IP that's in the parts that they have? Do they want to shred it? Do they want us to offer capability to shred it, which we do? And then how do they go about sending all of that material back to us? So anyway, just wanted to make sure I got in on that one. I think that's really important to us, is how do we make sure, again, from the very beginning, we're enabling the right behaviors for ourselves and our customers?
I think that's the ultimate question across the board, is how are you as companies enabling the consumers, the end users, to be able to take sustainability into their own hands? Okay, great. Well, so one of the next questions on the list is, we won't reach a closed loop until finished parts are able to turn back into raw materials for the same technologies. I think, Ellen, you've addressed that's something that is being done in terms of shredding the parts. I mean, I think from a materials perspective at Henkel, I think, you guys have so many materials that are going into 3D printed parts. I'm really curious in terms of what kind of efforts you're taking in terms of facilitating that.
Yeah, so there's a couple dimensions here. So we work, on the raw material, on the development part, where we focus more on reducing the use of the crude oil-based raw material and increasing more number of the bio-derived components, right? So that on the development side. Then on the end of life cycle standpoint, we emphasize a lot about the recycling program. That's why we partnership with TerraCycle, because we know in the end of the day, that's what we can do now, and that is effective if we work with the customer, OEM printer partner, service bureau, to managing the end of the life cycle, the supporting structure, the failed part, where recycling, right? It's a photopolymer, so you cannot really go back into the upstream, but then you can use it into different items.
Okay. So one question I wanted to get back to that I try to touch on all of the panels in one form or another is a lot of the attendees majority of the attendees at these panels are people within the industry. And they want to know, I've been told by many people, what do you need from them to be able to be successful with these initiatives?
I would throw that back to kind of the strategy that we have within our own company, where no matter what role you play, in this industry, whatever side you're on, to put on, I call it like the sustainability contact lens. So even if your job description doesn't include sustainability, you need to figure out how it can, because you're making decisions every day that have some sort of impact on a carbon footprint or on the community, on the health and safety of the product that we're dealing with. So, when you put on that sustainable impact contact lens, how can you make better decisions, more sustainable decisions that help move this industry forward in a more responsible manner for the long term? We certainly don't want to start seeing 3D parts bobbing around in the ocean like we see so many other, things these days. We certainly, need to all, continue to drive the energy efficiency of this business. When you plug those 3D printers in, right, they suck up a lot of energy, and that's certainly an area rife for innovation. So I would say whatever part of the industry that you're in, think about your impact on the sustainability of this industry and how you can help contribute.
Let me add on to that. From setting up the structure, and I know all the audience pretty much from startup, small, medium-sized company, I like to approach in this angle. With this initiative, first thing, we need to find like what Alan's role, find executive sponsor, find a champion for your program. Right? And then you can start small, be very specific, small things, small project, and gain more buy-in, top down, bottom up, right? Use that momentum to really send a clear message, consistent across. And the third part, and I think is very important, is that I really want to urge everybody to be open in your approach. Collaboration with the ecosystem partner is absolutely necessary, right? No single company in this industry that can do it all. So that would be my add-on perspective that I see.
Right, great. Sherry, anything to add?
Yes, there's certifications that are available. A company can have a champion or several champions within that encourage management to consider, or executive leadership, to consider getting certification for the ISO 14001. It's been around since 2015, and it's not a very well-known standard here in the United States. It's used much more often in Europe, for example, and it is the certification for a set of requirements for environmental management systems in production and processes. So an ISO 14001 certification isn't just for manufacturers, it's for many different types of companies, including service providers, and it helps set the framework for a company to benchmark where they are and help them by getting good data on where they are at and how are they going to improve over time, their water usage, their energy usage, and many, many other criteria. And in addition, there's another certification company called the Green Business Bureau, and they enable businesses to understand, prioritize, implement, and certify green initiatives and sustainable business practices. So their standards aren't as rigorous, say, as the ISO 14001, but it's a really great starting point for companies that just want to get something on the books and start working towards improving. Incremental improvements are important. Not everybody's going to be able to flip on a dime and hit the easy button to get things accomplished. It takes time and effort, and starting somewhere is better than starting nowhere. And these certification companies can help many different types of companies get this started and have some sort of way to be able to track and to monitor their efforts going forward.
That's great. I think that's such a great path for people to be able to be aware of. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of these opportunities to be able to influence the certifications. Let's see. So I guess this is an interesting question. I'm going to rephrase it slightly, but it's essentially a question about accountability. How do we distribute the accountability for sustainability evenly across the entire AM ecosystem to ensure that just not only, right now we're talking about the materials providers, the machine builders, how we hold you guys responsible for sustainable actions. How do you guys ensure that we can hold the end users responsible as well? Are there any initiatives that touch upon that?
Well, I would just say, from a customer perspective, we are seeing a shift. I'm going to talk kind of more globally again at HP. This last year in FY19, we saw $1.6 billion in new sales due to our actions on sustainability. That's up almost 70% year over year. So we are seeing a shift, right? And an awakening of general consciousness to consumer behavior and their purchase patterns around sustainability. And we only expect that to continue to get stronger. So, that's good news for people like me, for companies like HP, for all of you probably here on the phone who have an interest in this space. That provides some motivation, financial motivation, of course, to continue to accelerate what we're doing here. And I think continuing to connect the customer desire to purchase more sustainable products, as well, to the manufacturing end of this, of how do we transition to this circular economy? How do we transition to a low carbon economy? I live in San Francisco. I'm sitting here today surrounded by the north, east, and south with wildfires. This is a reality that we are all facing. I'm certainly not alone. There are other events happening all over the world where we in our own individual ways are feeling the pressures of things like climate change. So this shift, this customer mindset shift, I think is only going to help continue to accelerate it and put pressure on responsibility again from whatever part of the value chain you're in, you're going to start to feel it more. So let's get ahead of it. Let's set up this industry in the most sustainable way possible together. To Cindy's point, HP certainly cannot do it alone, right? We have partners on all ends of our value chain, and we are putting our own pressure on all of them to help us innovate and set up this process in the most sustainable way. And I encourage all of you to be a part of that movement too.
I think that's fantastic. And I think that's one thing people don't touch upon enough is, people who are organizations that are unenlightened think of this as something that's going to cost them money, whereas they don't recognize that there's actually revenue to be generated from these efforts.
Another important dimension, right, beyond the customer is also on the supplier side, right? I think it's also important to work with our supplier. And I speak from myself where we have so many initiatives with our supplier. On the sourcing side, where we also have a program initiative with the science-based target team to reduce the footprint of the raw material and packaging by 30% until 2030. The key for me is that, like Alan said, when you look around, everybody have to contribute certain thing on the table in order to make this work. Yeah.
So I want to do something slightly different today with this panel. I'm going to end it a little bit early with the sole intention of we have a lot of questions and a lot of very specific questions, I think, that are specific to each one of you. And so I think if we can end it a little bit early, what we can do is we can all go into the networking session. And if you each can pick a table, then people can find you and perhaps you can have a bit more specific questions about your specific areas of expertise. But before we do that, I want to see if there's anything else. The top question has been, how do we as an industry begin to create a more circular economy? Is there anything else on that topic that you'd like to add in general?
I would definitely like to address that. I think that companies in the space can be part of our effort in producing really great, independent, rigorous, and independent research on an ongoing basis to support our industry's efforts to become more sustainable. We need good, reliable data and metrics, and it's really sorely missing, and we can't make good decisions without really knowing where we're at. And only through that research are we really going to identify some areas that are a serious problem, areas that we're pretty good at, areas that we're excellent at. How are we really going to be able to make really strategic decisions and make the most impact quickly versus, you know, not doing anything on an independent basis. Just sitting in our silos isn't going to be effective. And of course, you know, companies are working through their value chains and also externally. And we're one of those external organizations that can help support the efforts of different companies in this industry across the board to really bring this information to everyone in the industry so that we can make a collective huge impact over time.
Yeah. For me, one last point, if I want to add, and this is quite important, one of the key stakeholders that we shouldn't forget is also about the children, right? The youth, and I know Women in 3D Printing, you also have a platform for that. In Henkel as well, we have a sustainability ambassador for the elementary school, the 7 to 12 years old. My 9-year-old twin is also part of that. I think it's important that we need to extend our angle, right? Understand the basic concept, reduce, reuse, recycle. They can become an ambassador in the very early age. And I think that is important for us to really consider that angle as well.
Yeah, and I would just,
sorry.
No problem. I would just say, you know, in terms of concluding remarks, you know, as we think about, again, how we are setting up this industry, you know, what do we want our legacy to be, right? How do we want to set this industry up for a long-term future that's really successful, that we can all be proud of? And when you think about, you know, circularity, there are so many elements of that, you know, and thinking about, if you go to hp.com/sustainable impact, you'll see our model for circular economy. You know, it starts with these outer rings around using recycled content, right? And recycling. Then as you move into the inner circles, it's really about services, because as you move to service-based models, that helps extend product longevity. And we think about, you know, the spare parts capabilities with 3D printing and what that's all opening up. You know, this industry as a whole, based on traditional manufacturing, has such a strong sustainability story just from the fact of how it functions, right? You know, you don't need the inventory, you don't need all the extra transport. So there are ways from the very beginning that already align so strongly. But again, let's think about our own personal responsibility, and wherever you sit, whatever decisions you're making, ensure that you're really thinking about this long-term future. Because again, you know, climate change is here. Social inequalities are here. You know, how can we leverage the power of this industry from the very beginning to create the best future possible for all of us and, of course, the future generations? So thanks, Kristin.
Great.
If I could just say one interesting stat that is just mind-blowing. According to the World Economic Forum in 2019, over 92 billion tons, 92 billion tons of materials globally were extracted. This is raw materials and processed, contributing to about half of our CO2 emissions. And that resulting waste is taking a toll on our planet and our health. And according to them, again, the World Economic Forum, only 8.6% of this extracted material is actually operating in the circular economy. So that's a huge opportunity. If you look at it on the positive side, is we have a lot of work to do, but we can really make a difference because we are just at the very beginning stages, at the tip of the iceberg here, and having an impact on really improving what we're doing from a circular standpoint. So just wanted to share that information with you because I think, you know, knowing what we're up against is really important, and we're committed to making a difference. And there's a lot of people on this, you know, session here participating and learning, and they all can make a difference too. It's you know, everybody contributing is what's going to make it happen. And we need advocates, we need champions, we need people to go back to their companies and start talking about environmental sustainability and how can we make improvements.
Great. Well, thanks, Sherry. So as I said, we got about an extra 10 minutes here. I think it's a great opportunity to have a bit more maybe one-on-one time with some of these panelists. Hopefully you guys can stick around for at least 10 minutes. The networking will go on for another 30 minutes after that. So just feel free to look around. If you have any questions as well, you can send me a quick chat and I'll be around as well. So thanks guys so much. I think this was a fantastic panel. Really appreciate all three of you taking part.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin.
Thanks, Kristin.
Bye.